If you're considering moving from Alaska, one of the big things that you're probably wondering right now is what should you do with your house? There are two big options that really float to the top for most people, and those are, one, rent your property out, or two, sell the property. And for a lot of people, these are going to be the two most readily available, and this is actually a question I get from sellers fairly often, is what they should do with their property. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be answering that question. Before we get started though, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel because that helps out our algorithm quite a bit. And let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So there are a couple things that you need to know first. First off, renting is going to be a lot more work than most people really take into consideration when they are looking at getting into it. It can be a great option, but it's going to require some amount of knowledge. It's going to require some study. It's going to require, as with mastering any activity, it's going to require a little bit of work to actually get it figured out. That in it is more complicated than most people will actually make it sound. For instance, you need to know kind of a preliminary understanding of the Alaska Landlord-Tenant Act. You need to know what the plan is if somebody doesn't pay the rent on time. What's the plan if they do a certain amount of damage to the property? What's the plan if somebody moves out and they leave all their stuff? Can you just throw all their stuff away, or is there proper procedures you need to follow for that? What do you do if, what do you do if? There's a ton of scenarios that really do come into play that you need to have some kind of answers for. Let's take a break real quick. If you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you do know that I focus primarily on the South Central Alaska area. And while that's going to remain the case moving forward, we are actually going to be partnering with our colleagues across the entire state to bring you market updates for what's going on inside the markets of each one of the big market centers here in the state of Alaska, looking at Fairbanks, Kenai, Homer, Kodiak, and Juneau / the Southeast area. So this is going to be a very exciting project called the Trailblazer Project. I've not seen this done in any other state before, where we are bringing you all the market updates for the entire state under the roof of one channel. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So when you guys are seeing market updates coming from people who aren't just me on the channel, you know what's going on there. If you guys are really nice, then we might actually be able to convince some of these folks to actually provide some more content and talk specifically about what it's like living in their market. So when you see these videos pop up, make sure to jump over there, give them plenty of likes, plenty of love, give them lots of comments. And just know that that's fulfilling kind of the mission we still have on the YouTube channel to help you build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate, whether that be in South Central Alaska or anywhere else in Alaska that we have our colleagues in at the moment. So just want to make you aware of that, and let's go on and finish today's video. Another one of the big things you need to understand if you are renting the property is even if you go and hire a property manager, you still need to know the basics of the kind of the legal stuff of the Alaska Landlord-Tenant Act, just so you kind of understand what it is that they're doing and kind of know that they are managing the property in such a way that's not going to get you in trouble, because property manager can break the law just as easily as you can without really having that knowledge. So even if you hire a property manager, you need to understand that doesn't mean you just completely check out and have zero interaction with the property. Obviously, you're going to be paying a monthly fee to have the property manager over there and taking care of it as well. And that's something you just have to run the numbers and make sure that that makes sense. Additionally, tenants are not going to care about your property the same way that you do. And they can be great people. They can really look after their stuff, make sure everything's all squared away. But your house is not their stuff. And they're not going to be the ones out there. You know how when you own a house, it seems like just about every weekend there's some small little thing you need to do, some new door hinge that needs to be tightened up, some kind of caulking that needs to be put somewhere to make sure moisture doesn't get in. You need to check the crawl space. All this stuff. Imagine if you took all those little chores that you do on a regular basis without even thinking about it, and then all that just stops. And then that accumulates over the course of 2 to 3 years during the time the tenant is in there. And you can see how the property is not going to be in as good a shape at the end of the time as it was when you got it initially. So that can be kind of just something you really need to be aware of. Tenants are not going to take care or care about your property the same way that you do. Additionally, and this is something that a lot of investors really have a hard time with when they're looking at cash flow and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I accumulate enough properties so I can just quit my day job and live off of the passive income? I say that's with air quotes, passive income with these properties. And the thing that they're not really thinking about is if you have one repair that needs to be done, like you have to have somebody go in and take care of the water heater, something broke down with the furnace, there was a broken window that just fell apart due to old age or something like that. A repair like that wipe out the net proceeds, like the profit you made, for at least a couple of months in most cases for properties that you are renting out. So when you are renting a property, especially if you have a property manager and you didn't buy the property with the intention of it being an investment property like that, probably your best case scenario is that you're going to break even in most cases. There's always exceptions to the rule, but if you've bought recently and then you're trying to rent it out a couple years later, then I'd say realistically, unless you bought it with the intention of it being an investment property, you're probably going to be lucky to break even. Let's take a break real quick here. Are you aware that I run a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast? On that podcast, I actually interview people who've recently moved to Alaska or people who've moved here or lived here for quite a while. If you want to go ahead and take a listen to that podcast, do feel free to go check that out in the description section down below. Also, if you would be interested in being interviewed or on that podcast, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about that. So feel free to contact me in the links down below, either on my website or through my Facebook page. Now, let's go and finish up today's video talking about the pros and cons of selling. So kind of the nice thing about selling is it is a clean break. You're not having to constantly be checking in and making sure that so-and-so is paying the, all the systems, the utilities are all good to go. Everything's moderately moving along just fine. It's a clean break. You don't have to think about the property ever again after you move. That being said, though, this is not a super easy process for selling a property. For the most part, it is. If you're working with an agent that knows what they're doing and you take the advice and we do everything that we need to do, it's not going to be nearly as much work as it can be in some instances, as if we were just making it up as we go along. So that goes a long way. Still, it is going to be a lot more involved than if you simply put it out there for rent. Two completely different processes and two completely different skill sets that go into that. Really, the best case scenario, even once you get the property under contract, is that it's going to take about 45 to 60 days to close after we have it under contract. If you are currently not living in the property, that means you're going to be paying the mortgage for upwards of 2 months. And that's assuming that the property is, that you're moving out the minute that it goes under contract. If you want to stay there longer, perfectly fine and all that. It's just saying, though, that if you're not in the property, that's going to be about 2 months where you're going to be paying for the mortgage for a property that you're currently not in. So I know a lot of people are trying to time it out depending on when they're moving from when they want their property actually closed and record. But sometimes the timing doesn't work out as planned. So that's something you have to take into consideration. Plus, it is going to be some work to actually get the staging and make sure everything's all cleaned up. There's going to be repair negotiations along the way. And it's going to be a more involved process than if you put it out there for rent. So where does that leave us? Should you look at renting your property or should you look at selling it? It really depends on what it is that you want to do in the future. If the intention is to come back at some point and you want to just move right back into the same property and pick up where you left off, probably renting is going to be the best way to go. If you have a larger home right now, let's say you have a lot of kids and you have kind of a larger home and you're still wanting to come back later, and you're just looking for someone to fill the property for you a little bit, but you know you're probably going to be empty nesters by the time you come back to retire, probably it's going to make more sense to sell it at that point, especially if you're military, because that's going to free up your VA benefits and make sure that you can utilize them wherever it is that you are PCSing. And if you have no plan of coming back either way, then obviously it probably is going to make more sense for you to sell it and just take the proceeds from that and plug it into whatever market it is that you are going to. Obviously, there's going to be some level of exceptions and some complexities and nuances in every situation. I would love to talk about that with you. Feel free to reach out to me, and contact information down in the description section, either on my website or on my Facebook page, and I'd be happy to chat. But other than that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.